Well, hi! For those of you that don't know me, my name is Jaci, and I help out around here at Centerpoint. However, as far as my faith story goes, I was not raised in a very strong Christian household. And I guess what I mean by that is, it's not that my parents didn't believe God didn't exist. It was that it wasn't their priority to raise us to have a deep faith with that. However, when I was in 4th grade, that kind of started to change because my dad got diagnosed with cancer. And unfortunately, it was a rare type of cancer, so we had seen multiple different doctors and specialists, and each one of them had a different opinion of how to treat it with no real answers at hand. And so with cancer already being difficult enough to deal with on its own, not having the answers, and then all the hospital bills racking up with and having all this extra debt, my parents couldn't cope with it, so they turned to alcohol. And when they turned to alcohol, it kind of pushed me to step up and be a parental role for my younger sister and brother. With that, I had to cook meals, help them with their homework, and kind of just be their guide while my parents were going through this. And it took a wrong turn really fast, and before you knew it, our entire family was downward spiraling. However, thankfully, my dad was working part-time for a trucking company, and his boss at the time was deeply integrated in his church, and he kept pushing and bringing up for Dad to get us to church because he saw where we were going as a family. And before you knew it, we were checking that church out, and then all of a sudden we were involved with everything. We were involved with kids ministry and VBS and youth group and mission trips. I mean, you name it, we were probably involved in some way with it. However, as my life went on and as I grew up, I started to not have time. In high school, I thought I knew what was best for me, and so I decided to move out as soon as I could. So I actually moved out my senior year of high school, and with that, I was still going to school and taking college classes in high school. But then I also had to support myself, so I was working 3 part-time jobs to do that. Well, after high school, you go to college. I went to college. So I changed things a little bit, but I still needed the money. So I ended up going to 1 full-time job on 3rd shift so I could still go to college full-time too, because I didn't want it to take me longer to get my degree. One of those situations where I thought I knew best again. So again, not having time. Well, then in college, I also met my husband now, Douglas, and at the time he lived in Green Bay. And obviously when you start dating, you're super excited and you want to see each other. So we were making the commute an hour each way almost every single day to see each other. And eventually we ended up moving in together, and we ended up a couple of years later, we were starting to get really serious about maybe potentially taking the next step. However, as we got more serious, came more serious conversations and more arguments about everything, what we thought future was going to look like, what we wanted our finances to look like, how family life was going to look like, and we just couldn't see eye to eye. So eventually, we mutually decided that we were going to break up. We just didn't think we were a good fit. However, spending 2 years together with someone, you become really close. We were best friends even then, and we didn't end badly, so we were still talking every day, texting, and hanging out, everything like that. Probably about a month after we broke up, though, something got a hold of Dougie, and he did not want that to be the end of us in a relationship sense. So he came to me, and we had multiple conversations together and with other support systems in our life, his brother Randy and my parents being the biggest ones. And we talked about different things that we could try to do and different things that we could work on. And it came down to the fact that we realized that we had a great relationship, but God was not the center of our relationship. And that was our biggest downfall. So instead of getting back together right away, we stayed friends, and we rebuilt our foundation with God at the center this time. We started reading Christian books to get more knowledge. We started talking to people, deepen their faith. Started looking for a place to call our church home. And since then, we've grown together in our relationship with God being at the center. And spoiler alert, Dougie and I did end up getting married, and 8 years later, we are still happily together, and Dougie truly is amazing. He is my best friend. He can make me smile even on my worst of days, and I'm so blessed to have him in my life. However, looking back, I'm not saying that Douglas and I have the perfect marriage. we still fight. I know that there's going to be obstacles and trials to overcome, and there are going to be multiple times where we do not see eye to eye on things. But now that we have decided to have God at the center of our relationship, it makes it so much easier to get through those things with Him. And with that being said, with everything in my life too, I wouldn't change any of it. The cancer, moving out in high school, breaking up with Douglas, all of those things made me who I am today, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. And it all ties into one of my favorite verses. It's Romans 8:8, that God works all things together for good. And I truly, truly do believe that, because I would not be where I am today without God being the center of my life and all of those obstacles. So thank you so much for listening to my story.